I'd like to welcome everybody to the community meeting. This is for changes to the Casa Buena. My name is Fred Casisa. I'm the Corte Madera Vice Mayor. I'm also on line, also our participant is Lisa Mongren, who's also a Corte Madera Council member. Both of us have been involved with the Casa Buena since the beginning, which it seems hard to believe, but that was back in November 2020. So I believe it's been like 8, I want to say short months, but long months. We're also part of a Casa Buena working group that meets monthly, and that was formed to assist in integrating permanent supportive housing for those experiencing homelessness into our community. And that working group consists of several Corte Madera residents that are also on this call, as well as several of our key partners, including County of Marin, Catholic Charities, which is actually managing the property right now, Opening Doors Marin, town staff that includes Adam Wolf and also Micah Morgatti, who are on the call, and soon to be our newest partner, which will be Homeless Bound. I want to say for tonight's meeting, but it's more like for this afternoon's meeting, we're going to be focusing on proposed exterior improvements to the Casa Buena. We're also going to be discussing some of the interior improvements that the county is looking at performing. After the presentations, there will be a Q&A session, so please hold any questions till the end. You can also put any questions you have into the group, into the chat, and we'll get those answered. And as always, any questions you have either today going forward, you can send an email to tcmmail.org at any time, and those will get answered. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley Hart McIntyre, who is a homeless policy analyst for the County of Marin. Thanks.
Hi there. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm happy to be here. I'll take just a minute here. Thank you, Fred, for outlining the point of this meeting. We know that the process last year was far more rushed than any of us would have liked. And so we're really happy to be able to come back to you now and ask for your feedback on the design of the program as it transitions to permanent supportive housing. We are planning to begin that transition this fall with a projected opening as permanent supportive housing sometime in early 2022, depending on construction timing. So we have learned a lot about this program, about this community, and we're really excited to incorporate what we've learned about Corte Madera and the town's needs into this housing project. We are, Homeward Bound, I know, is on the line. We're excited to be working with Homeward Bound going forward. We are proceeding as though Homeward Bound will be the owner and operator of the facility going forward as it operates as permanent supportive housing. We're in the process of nailing that down, but we're excited to be partnering with them. So I'm going to turn it over to our team to speak about the redesign and conversion, which I think is going to be Jeff and Cheryl and Jessica.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Wong from the County Administrator's Office, Senior Project Manager. I also have Cheryl Lentini and Jessica Fairchild, both architects who have worked on this project diligently. What I thought I would do is to give you a brief overview of the project, and then I was going to turn it over to Cheryl and Jessica for a presentation, and then I would circle back and talk about the schedule before opening it up to questions and answers and comments. So as Ashley talked about, we purchased this project late last year, and during that purchase, the building was under renovation, and the county took over February 2021, and we had contracted with Catholic Charities to run the facility as intermittent housing. Shortly after that, design work began to convert this hotel into permanent housing. The scope of work that we've outlined is basically will be done in 2 phases. First phase involves converting each unit from a hotel into basically an apartment unit. This involves adding kitchenettes and other amenities so that it can be used as an apartment. In addition, we are going to take out the existing office and turn it into a community room for residents. The third aspect of the phase 1 scope involves accessibility or ADA upgrades that we want to do for the entire building. And basically, we wanted to do all this work in the phase one so that we could get an occupancy permit so that we can quickly have a vendor homeward bound to come in and reuse this space for housing again. Phase two work involves exterior, what I would call cosmetic work. Could be landscaping, could be fencing, site furniture. The idea is that we're trying to get phase one work done first and get the building used again. But afterwards, phase two can be done during the residents when they're using the facility. Again, as Ashley alluded to, we acknowledge fully that, you know, when we purchased this building under emergency circumstances, it was a very, very fast process, not much opportunity for community input. But right now, now that we have the buildings being used, it gives us time to do this project and work with the town of Corte Madera to have this process, this local process of community input, which includes this meeting. The county will be permitting this process through the county's community development agency. But we are going to be working with Town of Corte Madera Fire, and we are working with Adam Wolf in terms of just having this modified local input. In fact, we've already had a few community meetings with the advisory group and also with the adjacent neighbors, Marin Joe's and the apartment building owner. And we've already incorporated several of their suggestions into the design. So with that, I wanted to turn it over to Cheryl and Jessica for their presentation. And I believe they have a conceptual site plan for us to look at.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So just want to make sure, is everyone seeing a drawing?
Yes.
Good. So I'm just gonna, just to set the stage of sort of what criteria we used in developing the design, which Jessica will go through. As Jeff mentioned, we've talked with the neighbors. We met with the advisory committee a couple of times. We also talked with Homeward Bound to understand how the facility might run and what are the things that are important to running a facility like this and the residents who might live there. And based on that input, we've come up with a concept that both responds to the code compliance issues that we need to address, the amount of parking, et cetera, and then also offers back some spaces that will serve as sort of amenities or enhancements to the building. I think most people are familiar with the site, which is right now just sort of one big open paved parking lot. But we have the opportunity here to actually add some more to the site to improve the condition for the people that are going to live there. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to walk through the specifics of what we've proposed.
Thanks, Cheryl. So basically, just in terms of the proposed site plan, we really are looking at trying to get some spaces, like Cheryl said, that are actual amenities for people who are going to be living there. So we've tightened up the parking a little bit. So it's definitely still code compliant, but it pulls it away from the building a little bit so that we have some space that we can actually do a little landscaping in. So we've landscaped sort of right in the front of the building. The concept is to perhaps add a few small trees to sort of act as a buffer between the parking and the landscaped sort of pedestrian areas. Another thing that we were looking at doing is actually reducing the number of, there's currently about 3 stairs that go up to the front of the building, sort of reducing that to allow again for a landscape buffer to sort of, protect the entrances of the building, of the different units, directly from the cars. We're looking at creating a little seating area sort of right outside where we're going to have the community room, so that when you're in the community room, you have a view out instead of a parking lot, at least of a little bit of a green space. We've got a trash recycling area that's larger and more conveniently located than where the current location is. We're creating a little area that we're calling a smoking area that's sort of removed from the buildings and off to the side. And then one of the other things that we're doing is we're creating a bicycle parking area. There isn't a lot of parking on site, and there actually isn't a lot required, but we definitely want to provide for bicycles because it's an environmentally friendly way to go. Cheryl, you want to go to the next page? And so these are just sort of some images. So definitely in terms of, and again, this is conceptual at this point, but in terms of landscape plant material, we're definitely thinking that it's drought resistant and appropriate for the environment. The paving material that we're looking at is a product called Granite Creek, which looks like decomposed granite, but it's actually poured material that is a AD accessible but yet permeable material. So that would be some of the paving areas. And then in terms of fencing, we are looking at fencing the entire site, mostly with the open fencing in the front where it's sort of a slat fencing. So it's solid, but there's some openings for air and also just a glimpse. So it's not just a wall. And then on the side that is between Marin Joe's and then around the trash enclosure, we are looking at the same fencing material, but then just, sliding those boards down together to make more of a solid fencing. And then for the railing at where the units are, something much more open so that if I'm coming out of my unit, I can actually see the landscaping. And then Cheryl, do you want to go back to the plan? And then the other thing that we tried to do in this is to create a little bit of an entry sort of landing pad so that when you come in right by where the front door entry is, there's sort of a spot, maybe there's a bench, but again, there's the space that people can gather and that sort of says front door. We're looking at there's a bunch of boulders on the site that we're sort of looking at relocating as part of the landscape design when we get into it. And then maybe, Cheryl, do you want to just give like a little swoop around on the fence there? So
Yeah, sorry.
The fence sort of loops around, separates the site, and then there's another, and that's the slat, and then that's parts the solid right there.
Yeah.
And that's about it. Is there anything that I forgot? Do you want to jump in with anything there?
I think that about covers it. Jeff, is there anything we've missed? But that's essentially what we're proposing for the exterior design.
No, I think that covers it. Yeah, thank you, Cheryl, Jessica. Just wanted to circle back again on the timeline. Right now, drawings and specs are nearly done, and we've actually submitted these documents for permitting. So we're in that process right now, trying to obtain building permits. The idea is that we would try to, once we obtain the building permits, to go through a bidding process. And then once a general contractor is obtained, we would start construction in the fall, in the late October timeframe. And then ideally, phase one construction work would be done in February, March timeframe of next year. These are goals. Right now, our Department of Public Works, we bid a lot of projects, every year. And right now the concern is that we're definitely seeing a lack of materials, material shortage, and we're also seeing a labor shortage, and that's could potentially cause problems. If those things do occur, what happens is that these contractors, they tend to bid up on their projects, and then that could cause some problems of going over budget. So right now I'm being somewhat, I'm giving you a range of dates, but the idea is that as we continue along, we're going to have future meetings that we will continue to give you updates in the future regarding these these timelines for construction. I think that's it. So we turn it over to Mike.
If I may, just, I think this is Adam. Can you talk a little bit about any plans for the rear of the property? I know we do have on one of the property owners that abuts the project from the back of the site. So I think the fencing, you had plans for fencing all the way around the back of the property as well.
Yeah, we do. In fact, this sketch is cut off at the building face, but in fact, we have planned and have shown in the construction documents that the fencing would continue around the back. There's an existing retaining wall. The fence would continue on top of that and enclose the other corner of the building so that the site is fully enclosed and screened.
Thanks.
Okay, Jeff, thank you. Mike Moriarty here with the town of Corte Madera. And I'm going to go ahead and open this up now for questions and comments. Why don't I just start though for the group? We have a question typed into the dialogue here. Are hanging baskets still planned? And would anyone be willing to potentially answer that right now, or we can divert to that later?
We could divert to that later, but I don't see any problems with trying to have Cheryl and Jessica look into that and propose some schemes for putting baskets, into the design. They're not.
I think the question back. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the question back that we would have is just, does someone have something specific in mind, or was something talked about in the past? But whatever information we can get on that, we can certainly look at it.
It was sort of something that in the past was brought up by the working group as sort of a more immediate way to maybe beautify the second story and put some flowering plants up there. We have hanging baskets throughout town that people really are very attractive and people take a lot of pride in. So it was that, in that sentiment, I think that it could be a good solution for that greening sort of the building itself.
Okay, and then Miss Susie has asked about potential, the bike rack area and commenting on some potential alternative location. I know that David Mcpherson is one of the attendees today, and he has something to share to the group on some suggestions on bikes. So maybe we can cover that collectively with that. But before we get to that, why don't we just let's start with Kirsten Zeter. Kristen, excuse me. Why don't we go ahead and take your question?
Hi, thank you. I just want to say I think the plan looks really fantastic, and I'm really glad at all the thoughtfulness that you can tell went into it. My one question would be on the King Street property in Larkspur, they've actually banned smoking and drugs. And my question to you is, knowing that this would be permanent supportive housing, and it's not something that's really would be feasible right now while it's still a temporary shelter, but when it's permanent supportive housing, have you or have you not considered banning smoking and drug use, just like they did with the King Street, and then maybe just explain why? Thank you.
I'm happy to weigh in on that. I can't speak directly to the King Street property or what was done there. If Homeward Bound would like to chime in, that would be appropriate. But generally speaking, I think that's something we can take under consideration. I do see several people have some questions about the smoking area. So I can answer from a purely policy perspective, which is not to say that's not something we wouldn't consider. But generally speaking, that smoking bans tend to be a barrier to housing for folks who are chronically homeless. Many of them do smoke. And some folks, that transition into permanent supportive housing is very jarring for a lot of people. And we find that sometimes folks are more reluctant to come inside when they are also required to give up their cigarettes. So There's a lot of evidence about people being more able and willing to engage in substance use treatment and reduction in substance use once they're housed. And so that's something that our programs do. They work with folks to give up things that are not healthy or helpful habits as they stabilize in housing, but it can just be a barrier on the front end for that. But again, that's not to say that that's not something that would be considered.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm a cancer survivor myself and live up the street. And when I drive by and I smell it, it just makes me concerned about all the children in the area and all the other folks. And I know that on King Street, it's a condition of moving in, and they have not had any issues with not having people that are willing to move into that space. They're also seniors. I don't think that there's going to be an age on this particular group. Maybe you can go into that too, but I'm mostly concerned about just the pollution of smoke and the health of all the residents of Corte Madera, including these new ones.
Thank you for that. We can definitely consider the question about the age target for this population. No, this is not targeted to be a senior program. We had originally thought that the vouchers we'd be able to place at this site would specifically exclude seniors. We're in conversations with the Housing Authority about what vouchers are available. It's not totally certain at this point whether we would be able to use the vouchers that are open to a wider population, or if we would be limited to the vouchers that are disabled non-seniors only. So that's a little bit of a technical answer, but it's at this point not planning to target any specific age group, just single adults.
Thank you.
Many of whom I will note are seniors. We do have we are housing quite a few seniors through our programs.
Hey, Ashley, one follow-up question on the non-smoking. Would that be coming from the county, or would that be coming from Homeward Bound if they're the ones who manage the property?
That would be, presumably a Homeward Bound decision if they're the owner operator of the program. But we'd be happy to. I don't want to commit Homeward Bound to something at this point, so I'm happy to be part of any of those conversations or work with anybody involved.
Okay, thanks. I just want to make sure we're moving the right people are involved. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. And why don't we move to David Mcpherson with his hand up.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's work on this. And if I can have the host share screen with the revised site plan, and then after that, go to the photo of the hoop bike rack. So for the last decade, I have served on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee for the town of Corte Madera. And for a couple of decades, I've worked legally with the Marin County Bicycle Coalition and volunteered with Safe Routes to School. So often we've been called upon to consult with shopping centers, apartment buildings, and schools regarding optimum bicycle parking. And so while I'm not trained in this, I've been doing it long enough, and I've been riding a bike for 50 some odd years. And so I have observed what works and what does not work with bike parking. And I, first of all, I appreciate that the architects, Jessica and Cheryl, have a very limited footprint to work with here, but I'll tell you why I have X'd out the bicycle parking where it's currently proposed. Two reasons, really. First and foremost, that close to the street and that close to the sidewalk almost guarantees that bicycles will be stolen. It's just simply too close to what thieves can easily, even with the buffer of the fence, can cut the locks, load them into a pickup truck, and be gone with, if there's 4 bikes, all 4 bikes will be gone if they're not junkers. Second, people who ride bicycles tend to want to lock their bike as close to the entrance of their residence or where they're shopping or the community center. They want to be able to quickly get their eyes on their bicycle if necessary, and they want other residents to have eyes on their bicycles. So even if the bikes were kept in the currently proposed space, the residents simply would not use those racks. They would use whatever that was on site that was closer to their residence to lock it up. So what you've seen here is two different suggestions for alternate bicycle parking. The two dots represent the base of a traditional hoop bike rack, which is typically 24 inches on center. It takes up very, very little room, and a bicycle can be parked on either side without interfering with pedestrian traffic, depending on how well it's located. So you'll see close to the building, there are 4 potential places that I've walked the site, and these are by no means fixed, but it's just a suggestion. The other thing that shopping centers and streets and cities and towns are doing is they're converting parking spaces to bicycle parking. So for example, an optimum spot to that would be safe and people in the residents would use would be to lose the number 2 parking space and alternate hoop bike racks in there. That would accommodate a total of 8 bike racks. And so while it may not be code compliant currently, I think we all know and the town can understand that not all of the residents will own motor vehicles, and that a conditional use permit may be completely appropriate to convert 1 motor vehicle space to 8 bicycles. And if we could switch screens to the hoop bike rack, I'd appreciate that. And no, all right, so if there's no, there we go. All right, so this is the traditional kind of shape. There are less expensive shapes, and also the Bay Area Air Quality Board, I don't have the name exactly, I do think has a program where you can get these for low cost or no cost, and I'll look into that for the project so that they possibly can get 4 of these or more for no cost. So those are my suggestions for bicycle parking to be more optimum. The other thing I would say is that both a solid fence on the Marin Joe's side and on the apartment building side would benefit, and the residents would benefit with potentially 2 additional feet of lattice top, which I think is code compliant to have a 6-foot solid with a 2-foot additional top that is lattice. I think that would provide additional privacy and likely comply with code. And I think my final comment is simply for those who don't know, the town, particularly the Corte Madera Community Foundation, has for many years, I think better than a decade, had a contract with a florist, not a florist, a gardener up in Oregon, and they fill up a semi and bring down the hanging baskets throughout the town and the village in the town center each year. So it's typically something that an order is put in sometime in the winter time, and in the early spring, the flower baskets arrive and they would be consistent with the rest of the town. Those are my comments. Thank you for listening.
Great. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, David. I can share your presentation with the designers to review at a later date, as well as provide them with your email address for subsequent follow-up contact if they have questions, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Phyllis.
Unmuted. Hi, I too appreciate all the thoughtfulness that has gone into creating the plans that you have shown today. I think it'll be a wonderful addition. Back to the smoking, I see you have a smoking area outside. Will you at least prevent smoking inside the units?
Ashley, I believe the current Catholic Charities does not allow for smoking within the residential units, and the current residents are required to smoke in the designated smoking area, which is consistent with our current ordinance. Is that correct?
That's consistent with the town ordinance. I wondered if that were going to be continued when it becomes permanent housing rather than the transition housing?
It's a great question, and one that I'm not at this moment prepared to commit to on behalf of Homeward Bound. But typically, I think that's usually how our programs work. And I would just, my only caveat is that I can't commit on behalf of something, on behalf of another organization.
Actually, I
And
can't
Philip-
imagine.
Oh, go on.
Oh,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead,
Ken.
Mike. I think we would have to be compliant with the local Corte
Yeah,
Madera
absolutely.
ordinance. So I think we can commit that we would be, the program would be compliant with the local ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah,
And as-
what Ken said. Thank you.
And I can add that to one of the topics of discussions for our subsequent meeting we're going to plan in the next month or so. Smoking seems to be a pretty hot topic, and we should certainly involve the community in further input moving forward. But yeah, we do have an ordinance in town with significant smoking regulations. I'm head of the code enforcement division, and we deal with, all types of municipal code violations, and we've certainly have got off onto the correct start with Catholic Charities. In February, I provided them the updated ordinance. They strategized on how to best meet the provisions within our ordinance, and they're currently in compliance. So we'll ensure that continues as well. So thank you for everyone's comments on that.
That was Ken Shapiro, by the way, from Department of Health and Human Services. Just wanted to introduce him.
Yeah, yeah, and I think in the development of this plan with Jessica and Cheryl, we also made them aware of sort of the local ordinance with regard to smoking. So where you see the smoking area located is placed in a location that's intended to be as far as possible, or the ordinance says reasonable if you're outside, especially from the apartment building that's just to the north. And that was intentional. And so I think that's been integrated into the proposed location of the smoking area.
Okay.
Okay, next hand up is Miss Pat Ravazio.
Hi, thank you all for all the work you are doing on this. I have been following this project from a little bit of a distance since it started, and it makes me proud to be a Corte Maderan that we're taking leadership and really embracing this project. And I love the idea of the hanging baskets, at least one, if not two, on the site. And what that would require is for the town to put in the infrastructure for it, the nice old-fashioned street lamps or whatever you're going to hang the baskets on. And then I'm pretty sure the beautification committee would be willing. I'm not actually currently a member on beautification, but I bet there's somebody on this call who is. And I am sure that they're going to be really excited about putting a couple of hanging baskets there, which really can make a nice statement about the town's embracing of the residents. And also we can get a business sponsor perhaps to help pay for those things that aren't already in the budget. So thank you all for your work. Thank you for all you're doing.
Can I just to respond to that, Pat? Just for clarification, I think originally at least, the working group was really looking at sort of the building facade and how to create some hanging baskets just from that elevation of the structure, just to screen the building itself. I think if I'm understanding you correctly, are you talking about actually those sort of poles out in the public right of way?
Yeah, if you do what is done throughout town, the baskets are really quite heavy, and I don't think you'd want to just try to hang them on an eave or something like that. But you could do other kind of structure. You could do a wooden trellis or something. You don't have to do the big town utility poles. I don't know what's there for lighting now, but ideally it would be a uniform look throughout town, that when we put in hanging baskets, we have a certain look of the street lamp and so forth to kind of get that, that signature Corte Madera look, if we can.
Thanks. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Pat. I'm just going to go to the question answer log. There's two questions in here, and I'm not quite sure if Ashley, if you're able to answer this here, but Eileen asked, what's the plan for a maintenance budget to ensure the property is maintained long-term? So I suspect that has to do with, once the transition occurs, the remodel occurs, is there a guarantee to the Corte Madera, community that there will be maintenance to the improvements that you're moving forward with?
Yes. That's part of the operations budget that we've been working with Homeward Bound to develop. The operations of the program, operations and maintenance, will be funded partly through revenue from Section 8 vouchers, which will be placed at the project. And then the county is committing to fill that gap as well. So that is there is money available, and that is part of the ongoing plan.
Great. And then for the designers, there's a question: as landscape is phase 2, can you talk about what will be included in the community room and what services will be offered on site? And so the follow-up is, how many occupants are there now? What has been the experience so far? So I think that's several different questions here, but maybe just if you can answer the landscaping aspect, and then as well as the community room. I think that we can say that, aren't there 19 residents that are residing there right now?
Today's occupancy I can't speak to exactly, but it's been about 17, 18, waffling back and forth, but beginning.
Yeah, there are 18 units. So, and then the occupancy changes on a daily basis, but we're, Catholic Charities, they manage it, and it's most of the time it's occupied.
Yes, the turnover is just because these are folks who are in the housing process already. They have vouchers in hand, and so people are exiting to their own permanent units. Once this turns into permanent supportive housing, there'll be much less turnover.
And so part of the plan is to have a somewhat community room for the residents that will be there. Is that correct? And one of the follow-up questions was like, what type of services will be offered? I know there's a variety of services that the county offers. I don't know if you can cover a couple of those.
Sure. Do you want to take the community room question first, and then?
Yeah, Cheryl.
Yeah, I can speak to the community room itself. So we've laid out a community room by taking over the old manager's office. We provided a laundry room, and then the community room has a lounge space with soft furnishings and a television area, as well as more of a meeting type area with tables and chairs and a small kitchenette. And then there's still a manager's office to support an on-site security guard or manager, however Homeward Bound runs the site. So that's everything that's been provided in terms of that community room, community amenity to everyone living there.
Great, thank you. And there was a follow-up question about what the experience is so far and potential crime rates. And I know I've reported back to the community several months ago on statistics of some of the calls for service for both police and fire at the location. I don't have those numbers at this meeting, but I will make note to add that to a subsequent meeting of just providing an update of what type. But I pay attention to what's happening in town. I have a lot of members of the community who call me when there's activity, and I haven't heard of anything significant in quite some time, but I will certainly be diligent in providing somewhat of an update at our next community meeting.
And I would also like to highlight that there's a significant difference between an interim housing program and a permanent supportive housing program when you've got folks who are in a transitional phase in their lives like they are in an interim housing program. There's far less stability. It's a short-term solution for them. They're sometimes coming in crisis mode, trying to stabilize, just getting inside for the first time. And that's a pretty different experience service-wise and community-wise to permanent supportive housing, where folks are much more stable. They're in their own units. There's less turnover. People are starting to engage in sometimes treatment or therapy or employment search or school or some of those things that give life meaning. There's more capacity to do that. And so the services mix is different, and often the community experience might be a bit different too. The services question, again, this is slightly premature to give you exact mix of services available, but there would be case management on site for sure and certain. And then beyond that, certainly anything that's not provided on site, Homeward Bound is very well equipped to connect folks to. Homeward Bound itself operates a culinary training program for folks looking for work experience. So if anybody is appropriate for that sort of program, there's a direct link to the agency that operates it. And then in addition, of course, all of the usual county benefits, Social Security benefits, veterans benefits, mental health services and treatment, substance use treatment, any of those things, Homeward Bound is very well equipped to connect people with.
This is for maybe what we can do potentially at the next community meeting. Maybe we can get Homeward Bound at that meeting. Maybe we can use that partially as an intro for them to the community. And this way they can kind of describe what they do, the services, how they operate in their processes. Might be helpful.
That's a great idea. I do see Mary Kay Sweeney and Paul Fordham from Homeward Bound here in the participants list. So they're here, they're participating. They're just not part of the panel today since this is a design focused meeting.
And I'm sure they're writing down people's questions.
Yeah, Homeward Bound's been very involved with this project. One thing I wanted to circle back regarding the operational, I know that, right now there's a lot of weeds growing, on the site. When Homeward Bound, takes over, we do have, maintenance and landscaping as part of that scope of work. So it won't be like, how it is right now in the future.
I think there was a group of residents, I think about a couple of weeks or so ago, that went out there and tried to do some of the weeding there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are volunteer opportunities, with the working group has their subcommittees, and I know Leela and a group of other individuals participated in volunteerism at the site to help do some weeding and gardening. So you can always email the working group at homekey@tcmmail.org, and if you feel so inclined to provide some volunteer service. So again, thank you. So I'm seeing a lot more comments on smoking and the laws regarding smoking and marijuana. And so I'm going to bring this back to the town manager and the mayor, and perhaps maybe have an isolated community chat on this topic and expand, but we'll certainly involve that in one of our subsequent meetings. I don't want to take away from what the designers in the county have come forward today to present this to exterior design. So just want to keep us on track with that. But I'm seeing the information as a hot topic, and we will circle back with it. So if we haven't answered your question directly, we will in subsequent meetings. So thank you.
And then Michael, I have a question to the designers. What's the plan for lighting in the parking lot, say at nighttime?
So at the moment, we asked our engineers to just kind of run a light level study to make sure that we had sufficient lighting around the building and on the travel paths. And that's good because they took care of all that in the previous renovations. So from a code and a safety standpoint, we have no improvements planned. In terms of phase 2, as this design actually gets developed and we're taking input, we can look at whether it's appropriate to have some supplemental, sort of aesthetic lighting along with however the design evolves. But right now we're not at that stage yet. This is just our initial concept.
Okay, so it sounds like there won't be any like major lights shining in.
No, not at all. All the lighting right now has been handled on the building to provide the necessary code lighting for safety for the most part. So there's no plans to add any like street lights or posts or anything like that at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any additional community questions regarding the exterior or interior redesign that, while we have the staff here to answer any of those questions or relay any suggestions?
I did see a comment from Mrs. Garbarino in the Q&A, so that was good. She had to leave, but it says looks great. She's the part owner of the property to the south. I mean to the north. So it's good to see.
Hey Adam, and there are plans, right, to improve, I think, the sidewalk on Casa Buena there next year sometime?
Yeah, the work would start on that next summer, on the sewer line underneath Casa Buena, and then through 2023 get a full complete streets project on Casa Buena itself with sidewalk overhaul as well. So yeah, that's a big improvement in and of itself.
There's a question in the chat about the sign, the hotel sign, and I believe that is asked, is it coming down? And I'm 99% sure that that's part of the plan, correct?
Yes, we are going to take that sign down.
You're not going to save it and use it for somewhere else?
from the comment, that's probably going to be what the first thing we're going to do in the construction process.
Repurpose it.
There's another question in the chat about sharing the diagrams of the interior redesign. Are they available today to share with anyone's screen? I know that it's fairly minor with just the addition of a minor kitchenette, but are those plans available to share today? And if not, perhaps we can upload them to our site when they become available.
I can certainly share the floor plans if you'd
Sure.
like. I can
That'd
share
be
my
great.
screen and show those.
We have 14 minutes, scheduled. So if you want.
Pretty straightforward. So hopefully what you're looking at and you can see is the first floor. So this is, and basically this kind of flipped upside down from what the plan was that you just saw, but here's the ramp that comes into the walkway in front of the rooms. Here are the steps. This is the community room layout that I had mentioned earlier. So we're retaining an office in the corner. Then we have this lounge area, we have the laundry room, and we also have this area for more of a table setting, tables, chairs, meetings. One of the things that people may not realize is there's also this storage area off on the side, which can be used however the new management decides they want to use it. You can see that all these rooms, many of them are identical. So they're all getting very similar treatment. And what we've found is we're providing sort of these kitchenette units, these compact kitchens in all of the rooms. And we are looking at proposing a Murphy bed that is, when the bed is up, it actually provides a couch and a seating area, along with a table and chairs and a wardrobe for each room. So that's the basic equipment. So this would be the first floor, and you can see that some rooms have slightly different configurations, but it's essentially the same program. We do have an accessible unit. So this unit is a little bit larger in terms of a different bathroom layout and taking over some closets in order to get space for a bed and a proper kitchenette layout. Then the second floor looks nearly identical. The building stacks exactly. One of the things on the second floor that is different is over the community room area. This has always been a 1-bedroom situation or a suite when it was the hotel. So we're keeping that layout and taking advantage of the fact that this can be offered more as a true 1-bedroom unit instead of an efficiency. But same general program, bed, kitchenette, some lounge furniture. And again, these are identical to the spaces below. So that's how the plans look.
Great, thank you for sharing. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the addition of the laundry facilities and the community rooms is something new and to accommodate the new residents and to provide them their own source of taking care of their own laundry, et cetera, not burdening, outside impacts. So
yeah, that's something that we worked with Homeward Bound on and got their input on, what are some of the things that they want to make sure that this building has. And so, yes, that we've got the 2 washers, 2 dryers, and that community space so that all residents can have those amenities available to them.
And then Ashley, I know currently Catholic Charities, they're all single rooms, so there's no families or anything like that. Do you know if that'll continue with Homeward Bound?
Yes, yes. So for permanent supportive housing, there are some minimum housing quality standards and space available to house families of different sizes. So this would be a single adult program. Occasionally, we do have somebody in a single adult program who's housed with a live-in caregiver for folks who maybe need round-the-clock medical assistance or help toileting, things like that. And so we do have that 1-bedroom unit. It has a little more space in it. But generally speaking, this is single adults. There's not going to be kids here.
Okay, thanks.
there was one last comment about whether a Murphy bed is ADA compliant. I believe they are, and you guys have addressed that, but can you just verify?
We really only have one unit that is fully ADA compliant. None of the other spaces have compliant bathrooms, nor do they have enough space to do both a kitchenette and a bed of any kind. So what you do is the way you set up a project like this is there's a minimum number of accessible rooms you have to provide, and that in this case is 1. So that's fully ADA compliant. And then all the units on the ground floor are considered to be, quote, adaptable. So, that would be the responsibility of the owner, that should additional needs arise, that those ground floor rooms have an accessible route and appropriately sized doors that you can get into them. And then some modifications might be necessary in future should it come up. So that's how that works.
And if I might add, because I remember in the community meetings last fall, folks expressed concern about accessibility for a project that's going to have 100% folks who have disabilities living in it. And just to remind people that many of the disabilities that folks have are not things that require wheelchair access or walkers or things like that. So everyone in this program will have some kind of disability, but those disabilities include everything from a serious mental illness to a developmental disability, or perhaps a chronic illness, traumatic brain injury, all of those things that don't necessarily require that those physical accessibility accommodations are still things that we might see in our participants.
Great. Well, I don't see any other hands up, so unless anyone has any burning questions about the exterior site plan or interior, we can wrap this up a few minutes early, unless any of the staff members or members of the working group would like to comment. We can close this meeting early.
I just wanted to quickly draw attention to, in the chat, Catholic Charities is offering their thanks to the community of Corte Madera for its support. So, and I will add my thanks to Catholic Charities. Thank you.
Yeah, Ashley beat me to it, but I want to acknowledge Catholic Charities too. I think they've been a great partner, and we'll miss you, but thanks for all your hard work.
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Ellen.
Great. Well, thank you all for attending this afternoon. And if there's anything that we can relay directly to the designers after the fact, or perhaps you have a suggestion for the town, you can always reach out to me. I'm available all the time for whether it's constructive criticism or just open to anything. So we're always trying to provide better service to the community. So we all thank you for participating today.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, town.
Thanks.